Erik, okay.
Is ook lekker, hè?
Erik, je mag als tweede spreker alvast naast Rahel gaan zitten op de bank. Dan kunnen ze, als je daar geen bezwaar tegen hebt.
Nee. Morning, Erik.
Okay, goedemorgen. Good morning, everyone. For the second day of Information and Energy 2017. I start today with some small announcements. Unfortunately, we have a sick call from Matthias Peisner. So his keynote from this morning about contextual information will be replaced by an interactive session by Ray Gallen and Andrea Ames about Information 4.0 and what it means for you. So we invite you to actively respond to their questions and help them to get further with the idea. The second announcement is that the Design Thinking Workshop of Rosario Durao will take place in room 14 instead of 17. Did anybody plan to follow the workshop by Rosario on forehand? I don't know. I hope she will have at least one participant. Okay, never mind. The other one, okay, Rahel will tell a nice story this morning about structured content, and Erik will do a game with you about structured information. And this afternoon there will be a session at 2 o'clock. They will also be together. So if you have any questions or do you want any follow-up on those presentations of this morning, you can join them at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's in lounge 19 on the other side. Okay? So one more remark. If you are looking for the Wi-Fi password, it's on the back side of the day schedule. So, and the next one, there is also a QR code on the back side, and we like your feedback. So if you target your phone at the QR code, there will be a kind of form to fill in about what you thought about this conference. Okay, thank you. So I think we will get started just in time today. We are 20 minutes ahead, 2 minutes ahead. I'm sorry, not 22 minutes. So I'll give the stage to Rahel. I will change the things.
Good morning, everyone. Who here got more than 4 hours of sleep? Oh, a few of you. Okay. I've been hearing about all the shenanigans last night.
Space bar the most for the...
Sorry? What is it? I don't know. There's some shenanigans. I think it involved alcohol. So I'm going to talk very briefly about the hidden potential of structured content. And originally I had a very kind of a technical presentation for a beginner audience that was kind of, how to put on data and metadata and what you can do with it. And then after listening to yesterday, I thought, no, you all have that. You've got it down. So I'm going to do something different. And I redid my entire presentation last night. However, having said that, if you are, if you do have basic questions, then in our panel this afternoon, please feel free to ask me or talk to me afterwards, because I still do have the other presentation still on my laptop. So I decided I'm going to tell a story, start by telling a story. So once upon a time, disclaimer, this is a work of fiction. The names, characters, business, places, events, and incidents are completely from my imagination. And any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. So once upon a time, there was a consultant who was introduced to a businessman. And he was the head of technology. And he asked about a different way to do content. And so the consultant had an idea. And she said, this could lead to lots of profit because of how poorly you're doing things now and how well you could do them in a different way. So they signed a contract. She went away and did a whole bunch of thinking and then came up with a proposal. And then they went out and hired a content person to work on a team. So he set out to seek his fortune. Well, not his fortune, the fortune for the company. And he was embedded in this team. And they had, some developers and UX people and so on and so forth. They're a big team. And he worked with 3 devs who kind of huffed and puffed. And they said things like, oh no, this will make extra sprints. And it's going to disturb our technology stack. And I don't see the commercial value of doing this. Because what they were doing, it was an external team. And so they thought about value in the immediate project benefit. How much will this project cost to deliver? So if we have extra sprints, it's going to cost a little extra money. And they don't see commercial value because the developers all had really good tools. But it was the authors who were doing things in Word and email and Jira, and it was a frigging nightmare. But all this is imaginary, right? Yes, okay. But our contractor persisted. He didn't wait 1 or 2 or 3, but 4 months before they would put one of his stories on the Agile board. For 4 months, he laid in wait to slay the dragon. In the end, we brought the dragon in. It was the head of tech. And he came and he basically said, okay, let me explain this to you. You can either do it or go home. And so they said, yeah, but no, extra sprints. And he said, no, it's a small investment for some big gains. And they said, no commercial value. And he said, no, we're going to save on content maintenance for years to come. And the audit trail itself, just having that really good audit trail is just going to save us so much money with the regulators. And then they said technology stack. And he said, it doesn't affect the technology stack. Does Microsoft Word affect this technology stack? No. So that's a red herring. And off in the corner was the consultant saying, oh, good, let's go make some improvements. So they did as they were told. And guess what? The QA person said, it saves big on QA time. And the dev said, it makes my job easier because I don't have to update that typo in 16 different places. And someone else said, hey, this saved overall on project time because the devs weren't making changes in 16 different places every week. And somebody said, hey, if I'd known earlier, I would have built the code differently because we could have gotten even more out of it. And the other dev said, well, I still don't like it. And the marketing person said, I'm in marketing and I have to learn a new tool. However, eventually we all worked it out and they all lived happily ever after. The end. Now, so what I'm trying to take away from this is that people tend to think of things in terms of their jobs or the project. And that my jaw hit the table when I heard the phrase no commercial value. We don't see the commercial value in this. It's like, how can you not see the commercial value in this? You are building a system. This was for online loans. You're building a system to do online loans. You want it to be 100% online. Nobody has to touch. It should be so easy that nobody has to call customer service ever. What you're doing is you're pushing very high value content. All these tools you're building, it's just a vehicle. And it's a vehicle for content. And the content's important. You're building a school bus to transport children to school, right? The children are important. The school bus, you can put a school bus in a compactor and buy another school bus. doesn't matter. And it took a long time for them to kind of get that shift. So now yesterday I hear about, well, it's not just yesterday, I mean from the first time I heard about this was last year when we were preparing for TACOM. And this is like Industry 4.0. And if you read about Industry 4.0, they talk about seamless transport of information between systems, you know, within the context of smart factories. And this was my reaction. Like, you must be joking. And the reason I thought you must be joking is because everyone's talking about the technology and the algorithms, right? And so if I had thought about it, I would have put in another slide that was like, when you think about doing projects, there's like the young hipster with the beard, and he does like cool things with algorithms. And then when you think of content people, and I'm not talking about me, but I'm talking about executives, people with the budget. And when they think of content, they think of middle-aged ladies knitting in the corner. And it's like that content stuff, it's not that important because, you know, like anybody can knit, right? And so that's the same thing with content. But when you don't have your content structured with semantics on it and, you know, a really good tight content model, how are you going to deliver on Industry 4.0? So, you know, I hear things like structure. Yeah, I use headings. What's a style sheet? In Microsoft Word. Oh, we give it to the agency. We have people who put it in the CMS. Now, this is very common on this side of the Atlantic, not so much on the other side of the Atlantic. But when I came to the UK, I was shocked to see that a lot of content people don't have a login to the CMS. They email things around, and you know it's a big mess, and then they email it to somebody, and that somebody, who Henry and I said, oh, that used to be called a secretary, but now they're called digital content managers, and they copy and paste stuff into the CMS, and then they read it, and they kind of go, okay, I think this is the metadata that goes on it, and I'll put the analytics code on here, and then I'm done. So we have people. Meta what? You know, how many people, how many copywriters call themselves content strategists, and when you ask them about metadata, they have no idea what it is. It's like somebody else does that. So that's what digital is it's all comes down to metadata. So if you're not doing metadata, you're just a copywriter. I'm sure our systems don't do that. Whatever it is you're asking them to do, I'm sure it doesn't do that. And yeah, I don't have time for this stuff. I'm busy. And that's up to the digital people. Because sometimes you have like, there's a marketing department and there's a digital marketing department. And when you ask the marketing department where the digital folks are, they don't even know. I think they're in that other building on the other side of town. It's really quite frightening. So how do you expect Industry 4.0 to happen if you get remarks like this? This is the reaction. So I think about it as like feeding the beast. And this is where it's starting to get some traction. So this is kind of structured, but it's not really structured. And you kind of think about that as this, you know, you've got a lot of systems to that you need to put together to make this come together and happen. So there's something called omnichannel. Did we talk about omnichannel yesterday? No. So omnichannel, the definition of omnichannel is getting the right content to the right people at the right time, you know, in the right context and so on. And, you know, we say usually the right content, the right people at the right time, but it's actually from the right sources, on the right platforms, to the right audiences, at the right moments, through the right channels, with right configuration, so on and so forth. There are all these things that we have to think of. And yesterday when we were talking about putting the metadata on the content and structuring the content to make certain things happen in certain systems and derive these benefits. This is what we're talking about, is making sure that all this happens. So when I think about it, it's really concatenating 3 life cycles. So you've got first and foremost the customer life cycle. So if you're about to buy something, you're probably looking for a white paper or some sort of proof that it's a good product. But if you have already bought it and you are frustrated and you're looking for support, you don't want a white paper. you want to get help. And so you want to be able to identify content for each part of the life cycle, of the customer life cycle. But then you also have the product life cycle. So if you're introducing a product, particularly a new product, something that's never been on the market, you have certain content that you are going to put out there. If you think about something like a Roomba, a robotic vacuum cleaner, well, the first time you hear about it, you need to have a lot of contextual information, right? So marketing information, let's say. But then once that product is starting to be sunset, and you're thinking, well, do we update it or not? Do we revise it, or do we discontinue the product? You're not going to be promoting the product. You're going to be telling people what to do next. You know, buy this new model, or you know, a Windows update is like, okay, get off of XP by this date and update to Windows 10 because we're discontinuing service for it. So you're going to have very different content depending on your product life cycle. So now it's the customer life cycle and the product life cycle, and then your content life cycle. Because you can be in the planning stage, in the creation stage, in the configuration and management stage, in the delivery stage, in the iteration stage, translation. So, you know, you've got lots of that. And if you think about that, that all comes together to deliver in an omni-channel environment. And you hear a lot about it as omni-channel marketing. And this is where marketing people are being told, go do omni-channel. Our competitors are doing omni-channel. And they're going, what? I don't know how. And I've actually had someone in a private marketing day presentation hold up her credit card and say to me, where can I buy this? We're in such pain. Where can I buy this? And I said, it doesn't quite work that way. But you know, I admire the fact that you are willing and you know, you have the desire to at least tackle it. And I think that this is where we're hitting the you know, hitting the tipping point, is that on the technical side, we're doing it because of all these contexts that we need to feed. And on the marketing side, they're being told to do this as well for entirely different reasons. But everybody is starting to get to that point where they need the same technology and the same tools to be able to do the same things to content for very different reasons, but we're starting to kind of converge there. So I want to tie structure to ROI, and I'm going to use, how many people here eat? What do the rest of you live on? Love? Come on. Okay, so I'm going to use food here because this is kind of like the common thing. We all know food. How many have never used a recipe? How many have never looked up a recipe? Okay, well, you may be at a disadvantage then. Okay, so recipes, you know, talk about women knitting in the corner. Recipes are one of the most structured pieces of content out there. And if you think about it, you know, everybody uses them as examples, and I have an entire deck based on teaching intelligent content principles based on recipes because it's such a good example. So I'm going to use recipes and food as my example in the next few minutes. So there's this thing called intelligent content. The term was coined by Anne Rockley, and it means that it's structurally rich and semantically categorized content. And really what it comes down to is that it means that if you add structure to your content and then add metadata, it gives you business benefit. I mean, that's like the 3-second message that you can take away to anybody. So what it means is that it makes content automatically discoverable. So in other words, like better search results. It makes it reconfigurable and adaptable. So if you look at the recipes, there's a schema.org schema for recipes. And so when you look at, and I just printed out kind of 2 screenshots, but there's many, many, many elements that you can put onto a recipe. But aside from structuring the recipe, so you've got in the structure, you would have a container for ingredients, and then each ingredient could be tagged separately, and then or structured separately. And then you've got your instructions, your cooking instructions, and those are each step is you know, its own set of tags. Okay, not enough sleep last night. So you've got these, these recipes that are highly structured, but then you can add extra semantics to it. So here's some examples. If you label the units, then you don't have to cut and paste and say 1 cup in North America versus 250 milliliters in the US. You could get that. That's something that's programmatically convertible. You could tag all the ingredients. So for example, you could have a recipe for a cake and you could add walnuts to it, but you could tag that with nuts or allergens. And so now you could reuse that recipe on a site that has allergy-free or nut-free recipes, and it could omit that automatically. Nobody has to cut and paste that and then take that line out. You can do all of these things that are a little bit more programmatically. Anything that you can do reliably and you can do with some script, you can do in this situation that I'm explaining. You could specify the cooking method, so you could filter. So you can say, oh, I want like a 15-minute meal, or I want something that you cook on the stovetop, or I want something for the oven. So you can filter. You can filter it by prep time, like meals under 30 minutes. You can specify the serving size. So each one of these elements, when you see that, like serves 12, I mean, that's a structured element so that you can filter by it. And then you could even specify the tools, because let's say you have a cake and you want to make a Bundt cake. You know what a Bundt pan is? Yeah? It's one of those, it's a round pan and there's a hole in the middle. Yeah, so, if you say, I want a specific Bundt cake because I made, birthday party or whatever, I'm going to look up recipes by that tool. So you can't do that unless the tool is tagged, right? So that it will come up. I mean, you can do that natural language search, but it's not going to be as reliable, because you can have situations like this. So if you have more semantics, you can do things like add synonyms. So if you have French fries in North America, in the UK you call them chips. So you could be looking up a recipe for chips and never encounter French fries, but when you have synonyms, now you can, right? So that's using your taxonomy to do that. You can categorize by specialty. So even though I have a recipe for a dish, it doesn't necessarily say that it's gluten-free, or it's suitable for diabetics, or it's vegan. But if you can tag it with those terms, now you're adding these more semantics that you can filter by. You could categorize it by a dish type, and it doesn't have to be like one type. Obviously, it could be more types. So this could be a soup or a side dish, or it could be a main dish, or it could be a dessert, or it could be one of those things that you eat it for dessert, but you could also eat it for breakfast, like Danish or a coffee cake. Then you can also categorize by occasion. So there are some things, like if you have a recipe for Christmas pudding, it will have the word Christmas in it. But if you have roast turkey, which is very common for Christmas, then you may want to tag roast turkey also with Christmas. Or you could say this recipe is good for a picnic. So if you're adding many of these tags to it, it helps you derive more business value, because you have, I don't know if you go on to any of these recipe sites, but there are hundreds of thousands of recipes, and there are hundreds of sites that have huge recipes. And one of my master's students works for Dr. Oetker, and I've gotten a peek into that side of kind of food production and recipes that go with it. And so it's not just the recipe sites, it's companies wanting to get their recipes out there that use their products, and then connecting with those recipe sites, or that when you do a search that their recipes will come up so that you know what their products can be used for, and so on. It's quite a fascinating area. And there's a lot of this licensing agreements between sites and so on. So I'm just going to give you a couple of examples very quickly. There's a site called Supercook. It doesn't even provide, it doesn't have any recipes of its own. It aggregates recipes. It's a recipe search engine. And you say, what do I have in the fridge? I have these 3 things. Show me the recipes with these 3 things in it. Another one, Yumly. They give you personalized recipe recommendations, and it learns what you like and what you don't like. So if you always reject recipes with dairy in it, it'll stop giving you dairy recipes. That's kind of the the bite-sized version of it. And then there's Whisk. It's another personalized recipe and it gives you shopping lists. And it uses artificial intelligence to kind of supplement the structured content that you feed it. And so you have all of these opportunities that come up when you have structured content. And if you think about the travel industry, that also has very structured content. How many of you use something like TripIt to manage your content, your travel? Yeah. So they don't create any content themselves. They just aggregate your very structured content from airlines, from hotels, from Airbnb, from wherever, and they put it all together, and then they get you to pay money to give it back to you. It's brilliant. I love it. So basically, the more semantics you can put on and the more structure, the more ROI you get. So it either increases the potential of your content and exponentially, really exponentially. It can support an initiative or it can be its own initiative. And it enforces that kind of consistency and brand experience across the board. And I think that's going to be a big part of how we describe this to the people with budgets in our clients or our companies, because that's a big thing for them. And from an internal rate of return, like why are we going to invest in it? Well, it reduces our administrative overhead. You know, we can fix something in a single place and it will propagate out throughout our entire content ecosystem. It facilitates our operations, and particularly with reuse and translation. And what it means is that instead of spending a lot of time with people managing spreadsheets, and I've had people come to me on multiple occasions saying, we need a better system. Why? Because we ran out of spreadsheet capacity. That's really it. And instead of doing spreadsheet management, you can be doing things that people are good at, like thinking, and leave the spreadsheet management to a computer, which can do it well. So that ends my presentation. I'm sorry I'm 3 minutes over time, but I hope it was worth it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rahel. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we're going to change machines, I see, and then you can ask questions after when Eric is finished.
It's just duct tape.
Yeah, to prevent unwanted. It's very heavy there.
I'm afraid Apple changed this, so I need this one. Good morning. Let me remove some duct tape and then start the presentation. Wim asked me to do a workshop, so I'm not going to say much. We're going to work. And we're going to work in 10 groups, sort of, in 5 people. So look around to your neighbors, because those are the people you're going to work with. And have a little business case, and I'm happy Rahel already opened, well, the case for me. So this is what I need. Yeah. So information management, information strategy game. And I call it an intelligent content survival kit. When you have the Wi-Fi, you can download some posters, and we're going to use that in our workshop. And if you send me an email or a tweet or whatever, I'm going to send you the Team of Best Practices book with 19 best practices across the globe. Motorola, Hewlett-Packard, Microsoft, World Bank, from authors like Joe Goldner, who couldn't be here, unfortunately, and Anne Rockley, we all know her, of course, and Bob Boyko and other good people. So I'm going to send that book to you. Those were the presents to start the morning with. And now we're going to do some work. I'm specialized on, is maybe very generalized in enterprise information management. So I'm a big believer of the information management life cycle. You start creating information and then you're the owner until you put it to the grave or store it for forever. And the business process, that's the main thing. Information is the process servant, sort of. So what I see too little is that this whole information content is not enough aligned with business and the business people. So the business alignment. And that's what I would like to talk about a little bit, and then we're going to start work. My first thing is, don't talk about content. If you want to end your career or stay somewhere in a basement, keep on talking about content and call it 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, 6, 10.0. The business has no clue what you're talking about, and adding new versions doesn't help. So don't do that. I think what you should do is start with a strategy. So how are we really going to help the organization achieve their business goals using information? I prefer information more than content, because content is a subset of information. There's also data and assets and whatever. So we're going to create what I call a information strategy statement or elevator pitch. Let's say this building has 8 floors of stories and a little bit less fast elevator, and your business manager steps in with you in the elevator at the floor first level, or 0 in Europe, and you go to the 8th floor, and this person is asking you, what are you going to do today? How are you going to help me? And then you say this, but you fill out the blanks. So we reach our goal or business driver by exchanging information with a certain target audience. And we make this happen by specific tactics, because this is the personal motivation of my audience. And we do this with tools, means. And we are successful when we reach KPIs. And we're going to measure it with this, so that then I can prove. And to make this happen, we need some stakeholders to work with. That's all. That's what we're going to do today. That's all. So I'll give you a little small business case. We're all an airline. You're an airline. And you're assigned to a project, a B2E, business to employee program. Because this airline found out we can be very customer focused, but without our employees being empowered to serve our customers, that's never going to fly. So we need a B2E digitizing program. And at this moment, people, pursers and pilots and flight attendants and turnaround leaders, they turn literally the plane around. And they have to do it as fast as possible without making any mistakes. Because that's where the money is. The faster the plane turns, the more money they make, because there are more flights, more planes can fly. So that's our business case. And the problem now, the goal is we want to be the best airline in servicing in 2020. That's the new millennium. Everything is 2020 nowadays. So that's our goal. Our problem is our employees, they get like all kinds of information from everywhere. They have too many systems, too many sources. They're overwhelmed with PDFs, newsletters, and they don't know what's relevant, what's not. They have lack of trust in what they're receiving. So they ask each other, what should I do now? It's a mess. So what we want our employees to be better informed at the right time, with the specific information that they need right now. So that's the business case. And I gave you sort of the goal, the problem, the pain, and what we have to achieve, the business driver. In your working group, you can choose, do I do the purser, the flight attendant, the pilot, the turnaround leader, or anybody else within an airline? What's their motivation? Why will they do it? What's in it for them? The what's in it for me is very important. What kind of information do we share? Just make something up. Could be a recipe. Tactics, how are you going to do it? Because they have iPads and apps on it, and that's how they're going to, that's what we're going to give them, that's what they're going to use. So which tool are you going to give? Some means. When are you successful? How are you going to measure that? And who you need to work with to make it happen. It's way too much for the time we have, but that's life. Yeah? You can do it because you know all about content 4.0 and 5.0 and 6.0, so you can do it. So groups of 5. And I'll give the papers to the group leader because we're very hierarchical. Fill out as much as you can. You can also divide roles. Barbara, alsjeblieft. Don't be shy, work together. Here you are. There you go. Okay. Alsjeblieft. Ja, kom. There you go. Heb je dan... Yes, 15 minutes. 15 minutes.
It's just between the big we should actually start with the goal was that we took it away. Oh, we have
Dat moest toch, hè?
Ja, perfect.
Oké. En nu? Nu gaan ze lekker aan het werk en aan het eind evalueren.
In the form of PDF, that is left, right, section. So we're getting a shit form of concept thrown at them. So they should have to try this language now. Keep ahead of all of it. Because the consequences of not doing it correctly are disastrous. For them, for the company, for the passenger. And low balancing. So what's the goal? The goal was they wanted to be the best aircraft in the world. Yeah. But anyway, that's one of their pages. By saving time, by removing mistakes, by they want to correct ground operation,
which property of which language.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so we need to explain why things would be this way, how do you want to make some kind of motivation? It's not about just sell.
Let's focus on that.
More personalized.
Yeah.
You know, it's they have to go with okay. So the audience, we talked about that.
Yeah, that's
You absolutely do that. Absolutely. Yeah. No, but I mean, Marcus, yes, perfect.
Perhaps it might be the better audience for the freelance and the business practice. Along the way, I think we'll normally discuss about performance indicators or presenting with this time.
Slide attendant is fine too. Yep.
Yeah.
95 students, like,
Okay. What's the slide? How long will they?
Yeah, and how do you handle somebody who's thinking too much? What they do when somebody's bringing about the podcast? Yes, it was elderly Jew who
Well, I think, I mean, the flight attendant, they must have a very detailed information about each flight.
what way you
Right now, they want to avoid being united. Instead of flight attendants.
Oh. Yeah, the motivation, if customers,
Anything customers may happy about
yeah, well, the motivation if the customer feedback is good, then they get a bonus. Yeah,
they get happy passengers. Things work well, they get happy passengers. Well, unhappy passengers is an important thing for, you know, they don't like that. They get negative, they get a lot of time. Yeah, but this is motivation, you know, we're on personal motivation.
can we do bonus then, or?
I don't even know what happened.
It's all good.
Oh, yeah, I mean, they've been going back up for about 20 years. So we get it in here.
So is that the point?
Okay. So we start, they call me the business guy.
Something that they all get some kind of wearable device or smartphone. So for me, it would be the
5 more minutes.
Business level, we have
5 more minutes.
the business driver might be that we have very happy passengers who like to fly with their by exchanging the relevant science information. So we could say we reach more revenue, we happy customers, buy, we buy attendance, we don't move it anymore down. The information will be timely and relevant. Timely, relevant, we flight attendants, flight attendants, mobile app. I did get the mobile app. Yeah, digital, mobile. Yeah, they select all the relevant information. They can help the passengers, make them have a perfect flight.
They don't want to end up in a situation where they're like,
Yeah,
what do I do now?
Yeah, so they have 10 passengers that order special food didn't arrive on the plane.
To avoid unexpected situations.
Right, well, I think it gets
There's a snake falling down the.
We do this with me.
Oh, so actually.
1 more minute.
Provide them with the relevant precise information when they Ladies to be in the system, airport will gather all the
So we do like
So the means that is the actual iPad with the building a corporate or an enterprise value. A concept. Yeah.
Zero customer complaint.
Customer satisfaction went up 5 or 10% of the KPI, and our climate accepted job satisfaction rating went up 10%. So both customer satisfaction and climate acceptance.
Let's wrap it up. It's, I told you, you don't have enough time, but that's how it goes in the business. So I would like to hear from each group, not only the statements, or very, very fast, but how did it go? Was it difficult? Was it easy? What were your, the things you encountered that you would like to share with the rest? Because I think my statement is, do this before you start anything and involve the business. Because now you thought for the business, so ask the people, involve them. Ask the persons, and the ground staff was quite popular amongst you. Ground handling, luggage. So who wants to share something first? Or I'm going to appoint volunteers, yeah?
Wanneer?
Yeah, it works. I think maybe I'll read out the final elevator pitch that we came up with.
Yeah?
And that is, we reach efficient luggage handling by exchanging visual, simple instructions with luggage handlers. We make this happen by designing simple information, because we feel luggage handlers feel underappreciated in their work and they might not be so motivated. We do this by giving them a tablet with an app on which we put visual information for their work.
Yeah.
We are successful when luggage is unloaded and loaded faster with less issues. We measure this with regular auditing before and afterwards.
Yeah.
To achieve this, we need to cooperate with the luggage handlers themselves, because we want their input,
Yeah.
the communication department, app developers, and more people.
Well, that's not bad. 15 minutes. Sounds like a strategy. That you can measure it, which is super important. How can you measure it, the business value of what you're doing? And there was one word, information. I forgive you. Next, who wants to share? Thank you so much. Who wants to share their strategy or learning points? Yeah, you can do it?
I'm in the right mode when we can do such a job in 15 minutes. We can do anything.
Yeah.
It was fun doing
spirit.
it. Yeah, it was fun. First of all, it was fun doing it. And 15 minutes is not very long, but it needs you to. It enforces you to focus on what is really important.
Yeah.
If we had a whole day, we would have added.
Go everywhere.
Yeah. So the limited time was very good, and we had an subject expert matter in our team.
Okay, that helps.
Yeah, that's vital. So we decided to have as a business goal to speed up turnaround time. We will do that by exchanging information on weather, schedule, slot times with ground personnel. We will make this happen by providing them information so that they can act faster and so that they can prepare their work better. And their motivation will be that their stress is reduced. We do this by providing them the information needed on Google Glass and a smartwatch. We are successful when turnaround rate is 100%, and we measure this by reports from air traffic control in which we can see the missed slots. And we will cooperate with air traffic control, airport and airline schedulers.
That was really with some help of a subject matter expert.
I must say, she can stand up.
And did a cool tool like a smart watch.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much. Thanks so much. 4.0. I think this is 7.0. So who's last? Who wants to add something to Barbara? Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We focused on the ground personnel,
Yeah.
since they are one of the first
Talk a little bit
types
more on
of
mine.
servants customers get in touch with.
Yeah.
So we reach being the flight company with the best service on the ground
Yeah.
by exchanging information about criteria which can enhance employee and also customer satisfaction.
Yeah,
By focusing on ground personnel,
yeah,
by bringing them together, having them exchange their experience.
yeah,
And we think it might help servants in being less frustrated, participate in a more smooth process,
yeah,
and having a more enjoyable working day because they have good contact with customers. We do this with one-to-one sessions, team building courses and training. We are successful when employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction rise. We measure this with surveys, and to achieve this, we need to cooperate with customer service, with training department and HR.
great, thanks.
Have anything to add?
No.
This wasn't really, thank you so much, because this wasn't so really about information and tools. This was about people and bringing them together. So an information strategy, people talking, sharing like feelings or experiences, that's also information strategy. Yeah? Doesn't per se have to be about content or written down information or data or tools. So thank you for that.
Trainings is also a kind of information.
Sorry?
Trainings,
Yeah.
yes, we need to
So,
provide
yeah,
them
then you
with
share
those kind of
information. Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks so much. It's a big mix of information. Thanks so much. I hope this was helpful. It was crazy, but 50 minutes, you did it. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Eric. Thank you. We have a short break now, and after the break, 15 minutes, we will do another game, Information 4.0 game. Sorry, Eric. So we continue with Information 4.0 after the break. Just call the people. You can use the microphone. Yeah. Just call them to go.
We're going to start the next session.
We're going to sit on the edge of the stage. We can stand. Having a chat with the neighbors.
It's not there yet, so maybe start without the link.
You got it?
Link.
So this is an open discussion about replacing the session of Matthias Meissner. It's about you and the technology we're talking about. What's your experience with it? What are you doing? But starting with an announcement yesterday, while we were here, Google is weaving AI and machine learning into everything. So we can all go home. Or we go on to information 5.0, 6.2, or 7, because that is potentially a message that's upscuttling all our debate. But this is marketing. So, Andrea, where are we at with AI today?
Definitely still in its infancy. As someone who's been working with Watson for the last 5 years, still changing the diapers or nappies, still worried about crawling off the edge of down the stairs and that sort of thing. So definitely in its infancy.
Our next job is convincing it to stay in school. Once it gets out of school, we need to stop it being a rebel. We need it to stay on a track where it's contributing to what we want done in an information industry. The ambition of all of this, and even Watson, is AI as a service. It's about money. It's about renting a system to plug into intelligent software. There's one thing I have a problem with that. Intelligence as a service, we already have it. We're here in the room doing that. So what's your experience with this technology? Anybody want to start?
Oops, thank you. I'm Maaike. I work at ABN AMRO Bank, and we have a lot of initiatives with artificial intelligence. To be honest, I completely agree that even the baby stage is still in its early infancy. When you look at the great lines and the big stories, there's definitely some really promising things going on, and I must say it's also really exciting to be at the forefront of this. But we're currently doing some proofs of concept with something that's probably quite familiar to us as writers as well. I've got a form with fields that have labels like name, address, and there's one field, field 46, and that is a field with the label required documents, and the field type is narrative. So basically people can put anything in there. They can put whole stories, and that's what they do. And we need to be able to extract certain specific information molecules from this field. And for this, we're trying to use natural language processing. And it's really interesting that in theory, this should be really easy. And it has been taking us the good part of a year already to even extract one key value pair. So when you get down to the really nitty-gritty detail, like implementing also like a CMS, for instance, when you really start doing it, you still realize that humans are way more complex than computers at the moment can handle. But what's really interesting is that the technology itself develops really, really fast. So every 2 weeks, there will be another sprint release of some software piece by a fintech, like small startup companies. So every month we can do more. And that's also a big challenge. How do we really know what's possible yet? And yeah, it's an interesting field to be in at the moment. And as a former technical writer, I definitely recommend you making this switch too, because we were made for this kind of work. And
Marketing would tell us that anything is possible.
oh yeah, we can do this, of course. Yeah. So and in the end, it will probably be so, but not yet.
Well, marketing, they're doing their job. They're creating a promise, so you have to go out and market the promise. Who's going to fulfill that promise? Anybody else want to?
Well, first of all, my children gave me a lot of joy and pride. So AI can do this as well. Just don't expect infants to drive your car. So it's a matter of expectations, and that brings us back to marketing. They ruin the stuff, our expectations.
Can I continue about driving the car? Because I'm working for a company who's into autonomous driving, and quite a lot of our software modules are based on artificial intelligence. But as you said, it is rather in their infancy. We are doing serious research and throwing out algorithm every 2 weeks because they do not work, and trying to find viable solutions, possible ways of recognizing the environment around us, mimic the decision-making logic of humans. So the way forward for those, actually this areas, I think is really AI, because otherwise you will not be able to mimic, reproduce all the complex computations that are taking place in your mind when you're driving. But this is a long way ahead. So, and my opinion about AI is that first, they are quite immature at the moment, and they can be taught to handle very specific tasks. So at the moment they are confined, and I think if they are kept confined, I'm quite optimistic about it, because if they are confined and they are taught to handle specific tasks, there are areas when they can produce better results as the human can. And for example, in driving situations, it can be fruitful, but we humans have to set the boundaries for the AI when they can operate and where they cannot. So
that's very true, and I will put a little caveat on what I said about Watson. When we took Watson to its first real application, which was with the Anderson Medical Center in Texas, and we pointed it at oncology, right? Very specific, not even all of medicine, just oncology. And we had Watson ingest all of the medical literature around oncology. Watson became very, very smart at helping oncologists sift through all of that information and actually present treatment options, right? So we could look at every single case of pancreatic cancer type B, and it could say where a physician would never have time to read all of that information and make do the analysis and make the kinds of decisions that needed to be made. They could at least get a first pass through every bit of the literature that was available, every single patient case study, which would be impossible really for a human to do before their patient passed away of pancreatic cancer, right? So you're absolutely right. When you give it a bounded problem and you train it correctly, it can do really wondrous things. Absolutely. So there's a tremendous amount of promise there.
Yes. I would add something to what Andrea just said, which is what she just described is a situation of an information offer, right? Which is exactly what we've been talking about. In other words, it's not so much that Watson decides what the treatment should be for this patient, but Watson presents an offer of options for treatment that makes sense. Again, we were talking about this yesterday, that the offer needs to be sufficiently large that the information that you need is in there to be selected, and sufficiently small that it's not overwhelming. And that's the trick, and that's what something like AI can give us, rather than it making decisions for us.
Yes, I totally agree on that, because we're talking now about narrow AI. This AI is targeted at a specific domain or problem area. And this discussion is often confused with strong AI, which is about replicating a human in its full humanity. But let me say one thing, is that AI is not an option, because the amount of content which is generated is growing exponentially, and we are unable, like Watson with the medical information around oncology, to process it all. So we need AI to go and sift through them. The whole discussion about fake news and how to detect fake news on Facebook, and Facebook employing 3,000 new people who are going to sift through the information is, well, 3,000 people just can't go through all the new, well, posts on Facebook. So we need AI for selecting and sifting through content and getting the valuable information out of it. It's not an option for me as a, well, from a big data point of view. We can't do it with, with people around here.
It's not an option for us because the technology is going to take us there anyway.
AI is going to have to be taught, and we're going to have to teach the teachers.
Let me make a remark which is much closer to your daily experience. How do you think that nowadays translations are done? The vast amount of translations are done by machines. Every big supplier of the SDLs, the Lionbridges, the Systron, they make beautiful engines that have a combination of your translation memories, of all the neural networks and the knowledge that is available, and they come close, that even surpass human translations. And why? Because in the neural part, they collect everything, all the translations from the past. So if you have to decide, even as a human translator, you look at the context, and then you decide, okay, it's variant B and not variant C. They can do that much faster with a bigger corpus as you have. So I think artificial intelligence, we need it. And of course, there are limitations. I saw this morning, I was talking to Erica, and Erica is in the New York Times. You can log in yourself and you can talk to her. She's artificial. And you can try it yourself. So I was inspired yesterday by, I think, one of the first talks. And this is also my field where I'd made translation systems. So I was trying to do a conversation with Erica. So I know it's a woman, so I started about some general questions, then about what is their favorite perfumes, etc. And all at a sudden, in the beginning, it looks very natural, but the moment you ask a question which is not in their repository, you get strange answers. And if you then keep pulling in that wound, well, then you get very nice conversations. I did not save it, but it was very funny. But what is important, I think, we need artificial intelligence, not that that's the holy grail, but we will come closer and closer to human behavior.
It is actually getting better and better at making a lot of.
Sorry to interrupt, because we have a break actually now. We'll start a new session in 10 minutes. 11 o'clock.
Okay, so
continue the discussion, you go to one of the rooms.
Okay, and so I'm going to have to conclude then. What you will notice is that when we do a spontaneous discussion on the subject, we all have a lot to say. The problem is we do not have a sufficient footprint to get it heard. Information 4.0 needs to become a consortium so that we can get our industry heard by the people doing the technology. And the big thing about being heard is to make them listen. It's all about that relationship that we develop with people impacting our industry without asking our opinion on where information should go. That's our stance for Information 4.0, the consortium. So we're asking you today, you'll see leaflets laying around, get involved. Tell us if you want to participate, and we'll find and define the structure for doing that. Thank you.
And make sure that you know that